Hey, gifted crafters, welcome to our Saturday Crafternoon. How are you guys doing out there? Hope you guys had a great week. I am tuning in from sunny South Florida. And for those of you who are new, my name is Nancy with GiftsHQ. Now, I hold these Saturday Crafternoon live events on a weekly basis, and we like to talk about all things crafting. So if you're into things like knitting, crocheting, decoupage, embroidery, sewing, you're in the right place because we tackle all of those things, and I like to change it up every now and then just to keep things interesting and keep us all connected. So feel free to go into the chat, say hello to some friends out there, and share your tips, tricks, and ideas, and we'll just have a great time today. So let's just take a look to see who we have out there right now. I see Amy Bowles. I see Kathy, aka Crazy Knitting Nana. I love that name. I see Judy Bauer, Catherine Lyons, Nana31331. I see Robin's Quilt Basket, and she's changed and got her new YouTube channel. So for you guys out there, please go ahead and support her. Robin's Quilt Basket. That's Robin Shiver out there, and she does amazing work. So go ahead and tune into her channel. I'm sure she's going to have some good stuff going for us. And I also see the Crafty Puerto Rican out there. So I do see a few other people in the chat. And hello, if you are new, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate all of your support. So we've got a lot going on here. I'm guessing my technology is working good. So if you can see me and hear me, please let me know in the chat, because I'll be sharing some overhead and different angles, and I just want to make sure that you guys can see and hear everything that I'm going to show you today. So I hope everyone had a great week. I hope you enjoyed your trivia. So the trivia today is worth 3 points each now, and we're getting towards the end of the first quarter. So if you're new, I do post these trivia questions, and at the end of every quarter, we select our trivia master. We keep track of all of the points, and we do post that out on the community, and I try to put it out on our Facebook group as well every now and then. So if you want to join that as well, it's GiftsHQ USA. So we have a lot of fun with all of that, and we're getting towards the end of selecting our trivia master, and then at the end of the year we'll tally up all of the points and we'll have our new champion for the year. Now, Robin was our champion last year, so you know, we've got some little goodies and stuff we were able to give her. So you know, things change up all the time, so you never know who's going to be our new master. So go ahead and try to follow along. You know, we try to make it easy sometimes a little difficult. We mix it all up. It's multiple choice, so just go ahead and, you know, give it a try. You never know what'll happen. So I see a lot of things going on in the chat. I see people talking about grandkids and doing all kinds of projects for them. So that's really exciting. I'm really happy to hear that. So let's just see, what are we going to talk about today? So just a kind of recap, if you didn't catch our live last week, that was live number 31, we talked about floppy hats and different ideas that you can do, especially if you are a seller, if you have a craft booth, or if you have an Etsy shop. You know, we have these big floppy hats that you can embroider on, or you can embroider on ribbons. So we talked about that and gave all kinds of tips and tricks for that. So that was a lot of fun. We also talked about the rotary cutter sharpeners, and we threw in a little bit of a teaser on English paper piecing. So what I want to focus today is a little bit on English paper piecing versus paper piecing. What are the advantages of it and disadvantages of it? What kinds of tools will you need, and kind of how all of that works. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I have a couple of samples to show you because I'm really excited about that. I am taking a paper piecing class from one of my favorite YouTubers. That's Crafty Gemini. So if you haven't seen her channel, she's an amazing teacher. I absolutely love how she teaches all kinds of sewing and techniques. So if you haven't caught her, you can go ahead and get her channel. She's really, really good at teaching. She does do step-by-step instructions, and she offers courses and all kinds of things that you can take. So that's another one that I'm taking. I am taking that class. I'll show you a couple of the samples of what we've made so far. And then I also have a lot of books. If you guys have been following me, you know I'm a reader. So I do love to have books and reference guides and things like that. So I'll share a couple of those things that I got, and just kind of show you some tips and things that I've learned kind of along the way. For English paper piecing, I guess you can say I'm self-taught because I kind of just watched videos, I've gotten books, and I just kind of taught myself that. And then the paper piecing, you know, I've taken a class, I've gotten some books, so I've got different ideas from different people, and I just like to bring it all together and share that over with you guys. So let me just pop into the chat really quick and see what we have. Oh, hi Taisha Banks, how are you? I see Norma out there. Hey guys, thanks for joining. Okay. So I see if you go to the Quilt Expo thing in Lakeland, you'll be very close to where Crafty Gemini lives. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I'm really would love to go. I do have an event that same week, so it's kind of like I would really love to go there. I'm just trying to see what I can do. It's just going to be really tough. The timing just doesn't work for me. But yeah, I saw that it's a QuiltCon. It's in Lakeland, Florida. It's the week of March 15th. It's that week. But yeah, it definitely one of the events. If you're in the Florida area and you can attend, they've got a ton of information there and vendors, and it looks like it's going to be a really fun event. Okay, I think you guys are chatting away out there. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started because I want to make sure that I cover everything. So the first thing we're going to look at is let's look at English paper piecing. So English paper piecing is a way for you to take a design, and let me show you an example here. Let's see. I'm a bit of a mess today, not as organized as I like to be, but so you'll have to excuse me on that. So I have a little container, and this is kind of just how I organize myself when I am pulling things together. So here's a couple of examples that I can show you. So I like to have these little containers, got them from the dollar store. And as I piece things, you know, I may do a couple today and, you know, maybe next week pick it up again. I like to try to put them in the little containers. And so you keep all the little pieces together. And then what happens is when you're ready to actually make your design, you know, and sew them together, you know, you have them all cut out and ready to go. So there's a couple of things that you're going to need when you're doing English paper piecing. And all English paper piecing is being able to take a piece of fabric, and this is where all of that scrap fabric that you guys may have out there. I know we all have a ton of them, right? So I don't throw away my fabrics. I do just kind of throw them in a bin. And here's an example of a bin that I have that's kind of overflowing here. And this is why I thought I better start tackling my paper piecing projects, because I do have a bin here that is overflowing with tons of little scraps that I have out here. So what I do is I start to cut up these pieces, and I like to use them for my paper piecing projects. So these are some of the ones, and these were kind of some leftover squares that I had from a charm pack that I bought. I think I bought these actually from the dollar store. So it's just a charm pack of 21 pieces. It's got different colors, and it's kind of the perfect design for this type of project. So I like to just kind of cut up the different colors and then just, you know, put it together. So what you do for English paper piecing is you usually will have a paper template such as this one. Now I bought this one from Amazon, but I'm going to show you some ways that, you know, you don't have to buy them. You can also make them yourself. And all it is taking these pieces of paper and wrapping, let's see if I can find one at least the right size. Well, not exactly the right size, but at least you'll get the gist of it. You're going to take this cardboard piece and you're going to put it on to the fabric, like so. And then you're going to, using a glue pen right here, which I can tell you I have this is the actual packaging that it came in. It's by Soline. It's called Fabric Glue Pen, right? And there's different ones out there. This is just the one that I prefer to use because it does have the refills. And all it is a pen that you kind of just, you know, have the glue coming out. You can also just use a simple, let me see if I have one here, but a simple glue stick. You know, just a simple glue stick would also work. But you would take this and then you would just dab the fabric. You wouldn't want to glue this onto the paper. You want to glue it onto the fabric and then just fold the fabric over onto the actual paper. So you'll see that you'll have it there. So that's one. Then you'll just kind of go around and you will fold your fabric. And I'll just kind of keep going. It's kind of good if you have a flat surface. Now this fabric is a little bit larger than I would want to do this because it would create a lot of bulk if I were to use this size. So you would want to cut it down to size. But what ends up happening is after you folded it over to the paper, you will end up with your shape, right? And so what you would do with that is then you would then take all of these shapes and you can make something out of it. You can make a quilt. You can make so many things with this. And the different shapes allows you to be creative, to make different designs. So you can kind of put things together like this and then like make a little flower if you'd like. And then you probably need to like coordinate with different colors like this. And then you would just sew it together. You'd have yourself a little flower. Or you can do so many different projects with these things. It's just, you know, it's mind-blowing. So what I like to do is just kind of cut them all up, put them in little containers, and then when I'm ready to make something, I have all the different colors and different things, and then I can kind of design what I would like to make. And then you can go ahead and make quilts, or you can make, you know, little blankets. I mean, there's just so many things you can make with this, and it's so easy. The only thing that you would need for English paper piecing, like I said, would be these templates, right? So these templates I did buy from Amazon. These are the 1-inch diamond templates, and these are very small, but they do come in all kinds of different sizes. So you could get this in the 1-inch size, a 2-inch size, 3-inch size, or you can make them yourself. Now, I kind of dabbled a little bit with it, and I'll show you some of the ones I made. And you can see here, I tried to put them on different colored paper, just so you could see. But this is a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, and 1 inch. So as you can see, you have the paper, then you would just take the fabric and then fold it on. So here's another one. Just grab one from this stack. And if, let's say, I wanted to kind of put it on this fabric, it would be very easy for me to do. And this is about the right size for the one you want. Now, what you are going to want is when you cut your fabric, you want to have at least 1/4 of an inch away from the template. So there's different ways that you can cut this. Like once you have your template in place, you can just kind of look at your fabric and then just cut the fabric 1/4 inch away from the actual template. And you can just do that by using your ruler. Or if you have an add a quarter ruler, that also makes it a little bit easier, because you would just bump up the ruler against the template. It'll automatically find you that 1/4 inch, and it's like a no-brainer. You don't even have to think about it, and just cut it, and you'll have the perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance all the time. So here is one that I used to cut, and it came out perfect. It's the perfect little hexagon. So, you know, I think this one is great. Now, again, you would just take your glue pen and you would just dab. You don't have to put a ton of glue on it. You would just put enough glue that you would need in order to paper piece this. So once you have that in there, you go ahead and you start folding. Now, what you will notice when you start to fold the fabric over is you will sometimes have what they call fishtails. And fishtails are just something that is just a little piece of fabric that kind of sticks out of the corners. And that's okay, because those actually help you and you won't be able to see it. So what I like to do, and here's the little hexagon. All right, so this is 3/4 of an inch. So you can see that I just folded it here and I glued it down, right? So gluing this down, now this glue, it's not a permanent glue. This is just a temporary glue. It will hold it for a few days, I guess. I mean, I don't know how long exactly it'll go. I've had it there for longer than that and it's held just fine. But this is just made for it to temporarily hold it in place for you to then be able to start quilting it. And the way you would quilt it is, once you have a number of these already made up, then you would just start to sew them together. And this English paper piecing would be for you to hand sew them together. So what you would then take is your needle and thread and just hand sew them using a whip stitch going across. You would just hand sew that, and then once it's all hand sewed, you would remove the paper from the back, and that would leave you with a nice little design. You know, you can do little flowers, especially the hexagon is really popular. What people like to do is mix up the colors of the fabric, and you can come up with so many different designs. And they're actually really gorgeous quilts that are out there that people have done. So, you know, something like a little flower like this, you know, there's just so many things you can do with these things. And what I like about them is that you can, you know, you can cut them up with your Cricut machine. So if you have a Cricut machine or any type of other cutting machine, all you would do is just go into your machine and you would just pull up shapes, you know, whatever shape you want. If you want to do squares, you want to do diamonds, hexagons, which is the most popular one, I think, for paper piecing, but they have other shapes that are out there too. And what you would want to do is measure the top or a piece or one side of your actual template. Like, how long do you want this template to be? That's the number that you would put in to your machine in terms of the width, and then you would just cut them out. Now you can make these as big or as small as you want. It's totally up to you. This is just a 1-inch one, and I think it's a pretty nice size of the 1-inch, but you can get really detailed and go down. I mean, this is a 1/2 inch. Look how tiny that is. It's like so tiny. Super cute. And so I think that, you know, you can make a lot of different projects with these, and you can be really creative as to what you want to make with them. Not just with the shapes, but you can also play around with the fabric that you have. Big, bold colors. Even if you do plain colors, you know, you can do something as bright as like this orange here. Or maybe you want some yellows with a little bit, you know, of a design on it. So what I would caution you is to be really careful if you try to get fabric that have some type of a design on it. Something like, let's see if I have one here, something like this. So something like this may not work for templates that you are cutting out that are just too small, right? This actually will not look good because you'll be getting pieces of an actual design and people won't really be able to make out what that is. So that's what they have. They have something called fussy cutting. And you may have heard that term around. So let me just explain what fussy cutting is. So fussy cutting is when you want to take a design that's on your fabric and you want that to be a part of your quilt or, you know, the project that you're making. So I'm going to use this right here as an example. So here is, let's see, here is an actual piece of fabric, right? And let's say that I wanted to make a little quilt for a baby girl. And I wanted it to be around these little elephants. What I could do with my rulers, I would have to position my ruler and kind of cut around that actual design that I want to show. And that is what they call fussy cutting. So you're taking a design that's on the fabric, you're taking your ruler and you're centering that design on your ruler to be able to cut out a square of that actual design. And then you can take that square that you've cut out and apply it to your project. So let's say I wanted this little pink elephant, and then I could have pink or yellow little hexagons all around it. That would look super cute and it would actually make the design pop, right? So these are the types of things that you would do with that. And this is how you would do it, is just taking your ruler, centering it onto the design, and then cutting around that. And I would prefer to just kind of cut it a little bit bigger, like, and then I would subcut it down to the size that I need, making sure that you always leave that seam allowance that you're going to need in order to sew it together onto your project. Okay, so that is what fussy cutting is. And I know some people probably have heard that term and probably just didn't really know what that was, but that's what fussy cutting is. So when you hear that terminology, that's what they're doing. And you can do that with all kinds of things. I know you guys know that I'm obsessed with Sesame Street, so I did find some fabric on Sesame Street. So if I wanted to fussy cut Big Bird or Elmo or any of these other characters, I could do that with my ruler and it would make a really cute project. So that's just another idea. So if your child or grandchild has a specific little character and you see some fabric with that character, that's another reason that you could use fussy cutting to be able to cut out that character or that object or whatever it is. Maybe it's a flower, you know, whatever it is on the fabric, and apply that to the project that you're currently using. So a lot of fun and great options for you to choose from when you're doing fussy cutting. So that's something I just wanted to share. So that is English paper piecing. And let's see, I think the other tips that I can tell you for English paper piecing, I like to use an 80-12 needle when I am doing, for paper piecing, I use the 80-12 needle, but for English paper piecing, I am using a hand needle. So there is, let's see where I have it. So there's like little kits that you can get that are out there. I picked this up at Walmart. It's just the quilter's hand needles. It's just got a bunch of needles and it does have the thimble so that I can use this to do my hand sewing on the English paper piecing. So the big difference between English paper piecing and paper piecing is that English paper piecing is hand sewed, while paper piecing is machine sewed. Now, can you machine sew English paper piecing? Yeah, you could. You could. But the outcome of them, not so great. And I'll tell you why. English paper piecing, when you are sewing them or hand sewing them together, the idea is for you to have them really, really close to each other, and you whip stitch them together. So by doing that, it almost makes the seam invisible to the eye. So if you were to take this onto a machine, you would have to either do a zigzag stitch to be able to capture both fabrics, and it really would show the actual seam, and that might distort the look that you're trying to get for the project. So you can do what I've seen done is sometimes people use a decorative stitch, and they kind of can get away with that, and that may look good, but you really need to play around with it for your project. So it really will depend, you know, what type of fabric did you use? Did you use just a plain fabric, you know, something like this with no colors on it? Or do you have something with a little design on it like this? You know, when you actually stitch it, you may or may not want to be able to see the stitches onto the side if you machine sew it. So it really depends what it is you're making, the types of fabrics that you're using, and whether or not you want that seam to show on your project. Most people do not want the seam to show, so that's why they hand sew them. And so English paper piecing has actually been around for a really long time. It originated in the US, but this is something that a lot of people out there do, and I just wanted to share that with you. Now, I see some questions out there, so let me just pause for a second. Oh, so Judy says, which brand of scissors would be good for fussy cutting? Well, Judy, I use my rotary cutter. So I have a few. I use, when I'm fussy cutting, especially when I'm doing those intricate type designs, you want to be able to use a rotary cutter that will allow you to make whatever curves you need to make onto your design. So if, let's say, you're cutting out as a circle instead of a square, the smaller the size, probably the better it is for you to be able to maneuver around it. So I have three sizes. I have my 60mm rotary cutter, which is what I normally would use, especially for bag making and just cutting my fabrics. When I'm sub-cutting, I could use my 45-inch ruler, my 45-inch rotary color, and this one is by OmniGrid. So I really like this brand. I like it because I like the handle. I like the grips on it. You know, it just makes it a little bit nicer for me to hold. And this one, you know, I'm not crazy about it. This is Fiskars. I don't like that the handle kind of slips and slides. It's not, you know, really great for me to grasp. But at the time, I needed to replace my rotary cutter, had to run out to the store. This was the only one that I had, so I went ahead and got it. It's not a bad cutter. It's really not. You know, I mean, I love the size to be able to get around things. But ideally for me, I don't like that doesn't really have like a grip. So it kind of slides out of your hands. I do like the locking mechanism, so you can lock it, you know, for safety features. So that's always a plus. You can do it with the OmniGuard as well. It has a little swivel on the side where you can, you know, make sure that your blade is not totally exposed. They do have the Olfa. That's another one, but it's a little more pricey. I think that one's probably the better one, but I use rotary cutters for so many things, cutting fabrics and other things, and I try to keep the rotary cutters that are just for fabric on one end and then the others for on another end, because I do use it sometimes to cut paper as well. So it really kind of depends what's better for you. In terms of hand gripping, I just don't like if my rotary cutter sometimes can slip from me and then I will cut, you know, incorrectly. So I think it's important to have the little grips onto the side because it does help for accuracy purposes. But some people really don't mind it. So, you know, it really depends. I know the Olfa is kind of like you press it and cut. So it really depends what works for you. I think the size makes it more important in terms of what you are cutting. So if you are cutting something with these intricate details and you're trying to get to these specific areas, you're going to want to get a smaller rotary cutter, because trying to cut something like this, especially something like these small sizes, with a 60-inch millimeter rotary blade, not a fun thing. Definitely not a fun thing. You will definitely want to trim down your rotary cutter to a smaller size so that it makes it a little bit more comfortable as you're cutting it, and the accuracy will be much better when you're cutting around these tiny little templates. So great question, thanks. Okay, let's see. 1 minute tip says, I think I'm going to have my hubby to start cranking items for those in Turkey and Syria after the earthquake. Those poor, yeah, you know, there's so many things going on in this world today. It's absolutely crazy, you know. Definitely any kind of charity work, I love to do that stuff. So, you know, great that you're participating. Alrighty. Nana says, I do mostly sew, quilt, long arming, and embroidery, but love quilting. Yes. Yes, Nana. See, I try to change it up. I know I was, you know, on a bend on that knitting stuff. Got the knitting machine, did a lot of knitting things, but you know, I've got to change it up. I can't just be knitting. So it's like I like to do a little bit of everything. At least here in Miami, it's gotten a lot warmer. So, you know, knitting hats and stuff, well, we're in Florida, so there won't be much need for that. But I do like to give it away, give it to my relatives and friends up north. And then we also have charities that you can do as well. So I'm not totally dropping it. I'll still be changing it up every now and then. But I like to do different things. You know, it's just keeps it a little bit more interesting. Okay, so that is, let me see if I covered everything I wanted to tell you on EPP. I do have some side notes here as well. Let's see. So English paper piecing, it stabilizes fabric pieces with paper before you sew them into intricate designs, which is like what we talked about, and this is also done by hand. So let's take a look a little bit at paper piecings or foundation paper piecing, and I'm gonna clear this up a little bit just because I have a couple of things I want to show you on paper piecing, because this is the English paper piecing. Now let's switch over to just paper piecing, and there's a little bit of a difference on that, and there's just so many fun projects you can make with this stuff. It really is. So I'll go ahead and put these off to the side, and let me just give you the tools that you're going to need to do paper piecing. Now, English paper piecing, I thought it's a lot of fun, but you do need to have your fabric glue stick. You do need to have the templates, obviously your rotary cutter, and you have to hand sew them. So some people are kind of like, don't really want to hand sew, you know, they like to use their machine. So if you like to use your machine, then what you can do is foundation paper piecing. And there's a couple supplies that you're going to need for that. So there are different ways that you can do foundation paper piecing, but let me just show you the first way that I do it is using, it's called Perfect Piecing Transparent Blank Quilting Block Foundation Sheets to Mark and Sew. These come 50 in a pack. I think I got them from Amazon. These are by Taylor, but there are different brands that are out there. Now, this is just one way of doing it. Another way of doing foundation paper piecing is using freezer paper. And you can get that as well. I bought this one from Amazon also. This one comes 30 sheets in the pack. It's called Quilters Freezer Paper Sheets. And so these are the two types of foundation paper piecing paper that you will need in order to do it. Now, I started off just using the paper method. And in order to use the paper method, what you would do is run it through your printer. It would print the design out onto the paper, and then you'll be able to start doing your foundation paper piecing. The freezer paper, you put the design on the paper, but the difference between the freezer paper and the paper piecing is that the freezer paper, you can reuse these. So you can set up your template and then kind of just reuse it over and over again. So it's, for the long run, this is more economical because you'll be able to reuse your templates. But if you don't want to reuse your templates and you prefer to just do it this way, you can do that also. So it's just a little bit of a difference when you're, the process of when you're putting it together, but it is a lot of fun to do these projects. And let me just show you a couple things. So I did get this book. This is by Carol Doak, and I got this a while back. This was like in one of Hobby Lobby's. They have a lot of books sometimes on clearance, so I love to pick them up. And it's just show me how to paper piece. And it's everything that the beginners need to know. And so it's a very, very simple, small little book that shows you exactly how to paper piece. And it does come, let me just show you what it looks like. It comes with the template itself. So the template for this book is a little heart. So this is all that this little book shows you how to do, is how to do a heart quilt. So what you can do is you can start off with these books, and it talks about the measurements and, you know, how you would start off. And this one comes with the foundation paper already. So all you have to do is cut it up. So if you're hesitant to starting off and buying a pack and, you know, printing out a design, you can just kind of pick up one of these books. They sometimes have these papers inside. They're like little starter projects, and you'll be good to go. So this one comes with this template. You can see the template there. And the template is numbered. Sometimes they have letters and numbers, letters, sometimes it's numbers, sometimes it's the letter with the number. And you have to kind of pay attention to that because it's really important. It kind of tells you where you need to start. So you would need to follow the letters or the numbers. In this case, we have numbers. So you would follow each number, and it would tell you where to place the fabric and how to go ahead and do your paper foundation. It's really easy to do once you follow the numbers. If you think about how when you were little, you had that paint by numbers where you had the little paper designs and they had these numbers on it, and they give you the paints and you had to paint, you know, it would tell you which paint to use for which color. It's kind of the same concept, but this is with fabric and your sewing machine. So what's great about that is now, you know, you have your paper, and then all you would do is, you know, follow the steps. Now the book tells you exactly how to do it on here. You know, you would put your fabric down, you would fold it, you would cut it, you know, so there's all kinds of ways to do it. And I'm also taking, like I mentioned, that class with Crafty Gemini. She goes through step-by-step process on how to do it. So she's great at that. But this is how you would really put it together. And the book does show you step by step as well. So, you know, it's kind of nice to be able to, you know, have this as my reference, because sometimes I would kind of forget, how did I do that when I go back to a project. But I like to have my books to kind of reference as my little reference guide, and then videos are also great as well. But I did get this paper piecing book, and I was able to make a couple of things. And this is another one that, and this is a magazine. You can get this at Joann's. It's called Patchwork Quilting. And I like it because this one talks about English paper piecing, and it gives you a template to be able to make things like this. So you could see the little panda. So you would think this panda is difficult to make, and you might kind of be like, oh, I don't know, that looks a little, you know, difficult because a lot of details on it, but it's actually not. If you English paper piece this, it is pretty easy to make. They break it down for you in the magazine, and you can see here how they are folding the fabric over with the little templates, and you've got your numbered diagrams so you know which one you would associate with. So I think it's really neat, you know, that they have this. They do include the templates if you buy the magazine. So it's really nice to be able to take this, and it's something that if you first, before you start cutting it up, if you copy it, you know, and just have it on another paper, or maybe trace it using those plastic cutting boards that are transparent, you can kind of outline that with a Sharpie, and so you'll have a plastic piece that, you know, really will last you a while for that. So definitely, you know, different things you can do, because then once you cut this up, then it kind of like you can't reuse it anymore. So I like to try to copy it or just use one of those transparent cutting boards to make the template myself, and that way I can reuse it over and over again. So definitely. See, so Judy's asking, I missed where you found this book. So this one I got from Joann's, and in Joann's they have a little section that they have all of their magazines, and so they have different things. So this is one on quilting that I got. The book on paper piecing I did get from Hobby Lobby. So this one was Hobby Lobby, this one was Joann's. So the magazine, you can subscribe to them as well, but they have all kinds of magazines for all kinds of crafts. So this is one on quilting. I did have another one that I picked up. Let me see if I have it here. Haven't even opened this one, but this one is on crocheting and knitting. And what I like about these little magazines, because they sometimes bring it in a pack, like some months it'll just be the magazine alone, and then other months it'll be like packaged with a little project. So this specific one is crocheting and knitting, and it's giving you the yarn in order to make some of these little projects. So this one says 8 balls of needle, 8 balls of yarn inside, and it includes the needles, 2 little plastic needles. And it shows you how to knit that specific project, and you have everything that you need in order to make it. So I like to pick up these little magazines and things that they have. I do kind of have a little collection of them, but you know, I think it's a lot of fun, you know, and just to kind of get into something and learning different techniques. And you know, you have the book as a reference guide, and you know, it talks a little bit about things. So this one specific is on quilting, you know, and they have different things on quilting. It talks about the techniques. This one's specific on paper piecing, you know, and they have different examples of what you can make, where you can get supplies and different vendors and things like that. So it's a really neat little magazine to take. I like to have them as references. So definitely, you know, if you're a reader like I am, you know, you may want to pick up some of these goodies because they do help out. So that's what I get in terms of references on how I can do my paper piecing. So let me just show you a few examples. And again, this is the class that I'm taking with Crafty Gemini. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples that we're making in her class. And, you know, if you haven't taken her class, she really has some really great classes you may want to sign up for. I think the class that we're taking right now is closed because she usually closes it when it's live, but then once it's over, you can take it. It's just not going to have the live portion. But this is one that I've done, and I kind of kept the paper just so I could show you. This is a sample piece. And let me see, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different fabrics put together. And you may see my little stash back here. So what I do, and let me just bring them over so you guys can see it. What I like to do when I'm doing these types of paper piecing projects, if I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of them and just kind of putting them maybe as a quilt or something, I will spend some time just to do the cutting. So I would get the cutting instructions, and in this case, she gave us the cutting instructions. So I have little piles on here, and I make my little piles of each piece that it requires. So let's see, can we get the overhead here? Yeah. So these are the piles that I have, and this is for this specific quilt. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 different fabrics onto this piece, and here's my 6 different piles. And it requires a little bit of organization, which is kind of really nice. If you stay really organized, you can really make some beautiful items on here. So I've got my 6 piles with the different measurements that I need for this particular design. And what I do is I use painter's tape, and I just kind of label them on the top. So I think I have them backwards for you guys. So let me just turn them around. There we go. So I just label them according to the actual design. So in this case, so in the other example I showed you, it had numbers. This one has letters and numbers. So I would just label them as I need it. So after I cut them and I put them in their piles, now when I'm ready to actually make the quilt, is I'm going to then take each piece as I do it. So like, let's say I would start with A1, sew A2, then I would sew A3, A4, A5, A6, you know, and so on. So I would be able to go into my pile and just pull out the fabric that belongs to that cut, because you could easily get confused and sew the wrong piece. And when you're making a bunch of these, you want the colors to all coordinate and go the same way. You don't want that your fabrics actually got mixed matched and going the other way. So definitely, you know, it's really great for you to stay organized. You can use painter's tape, you can use little labels, you know, whatever it is that you need in order to keep yourself organized for this. I just like to put them in the little piles, label them until I'm ready to actually sew these together. So this is just one template that I made. And let me just show you some of the other examples. So other one that I made was this little star. So I use, if you recall the fabric that I had just showed you, it's from the Dollar Tree. So this was just like my little practice one. You know, it's got all the cutting in the back. And this is what it would look like. So you can do something like this, you could make a quilt out of. So you can take these, right? This is just something I wanted to do some bold colors. So you could take these and then just quilt them. You know, you can make a bunch of them and you can make a really beautiful quilt. You can make a bag, you can make a zipper pouch, you can make so many things with these. The other thing we made, this was a fun one, and it was a chicken. So loved how that one came out. I thought that one was really cute. You know, you can do some really fun colors with that. And then we also made a butterfly. So these are just one of many designs that you can make when you're doing paper piecing. Or even if you're using the freezer paper, you know, the end result would be the same. It's just two different ways of how you actually get to that end result. So this is just some examples on some of the classes that I'm taking with her. And you can also get these from books. So they, you know, they're out there at Joann's. I don't know if Michael's has it as well, but you can also, you know, just check to see what they have. I know that Joann does have the magazines because that's kind of where I always like to pick them up. So that's some, you know, examples of just paper piecing. And this one is done on a machine. So this is something that when you put your fabric onto the paper, what you would then do is you would have to put your fabric in, fold the fabric over, and then align the second piece of fabric to it. And what you would do is sew on the actual line. So once you're sewing on the line, and let me see if you could see that here, kind of difficult to see, but you would basically sew on the line and then it would leave you with your finished little block. So something that's really cute. Now, what kind of supplies are you going to need for paper piecing? It's a little bit different than English paper piecing. So for paper piecing, I like to use my 1/4 rulers. And I picked these up a long time ago, probably Amazon. I'm sure you can find it there. I'll put some links out on the description on where I find some of these things, but I'm pretty sure this was Amazon. This is called an add a quarter plus. And so these rulers are really, really, really great when you're doing paper piecing. So the way it works is that the ruler itself has a little notch. Now, I don't know if you could see that. It's going to be a little difficult. Let me see if I can kind of add my paper to it. Do you see how when I bump my paper to the ruler, it kind of stops? And you have this edge out there. So when you're bumping your fabric to it, it'll stop you and won't allow you to kind of move forward. What that leaves you with is that little strip represents 1/4 inch. So when you're cutting your fabrics and you bump up your fabric onto that ruler, you will always have a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance when you're cutting. So let me just give you a real quick example of that. So here's 2 fabrics, and I'll try to pick some contrasting ones. I think that might show a little better on the camera. So let's say I have this fabric here, and what I would do is I will want to line up these 2 and sew them together. But what I would need to do is take my ruler and line it up. Let me do it this way. I'm trying to find a way that I can show you guys. It'll show really good on the camera. I think that kind of does it. Okay. So I have 2 strips of fabrics here. And let's say I want to cut this pink fabric down and have a 1/4 inch seam allowance outside of this other fabric. I would then take my 1/4 plus ruler and line up that little bridge against my fabric. See how that kind of has the fabric onto the edge here, and then it has this 1/4 inch sticking out. What you would then do is then you would take your rotary cutter and you would cut right up against this ruler. That would leave you with exactly 1/4 inch from where the fabric lies. And that will allow you to always have a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance from that fabric. So when you go to sew it together, now you're going to have that 1/4 inch is going to be perfectly aligned, and it will allow you to then, you know, have your project look perfect because that seam will just be spot on. So this ruler, it comes in 2 different sizes. When I'm doing paper piecing projects like this, I like to use the smaller one. It's a little more handy, but they do have a larger size that have that 1/4 inch. And I believe they also sell ones with a 1/2 inch seam allowance as well. Most popular ones are the 1/4 inch seam allowances, so that's the ones that I have because the quilts that I make require a 1/4 inch. But this is what I used when I was, you know, doing my paper piecing projects, and you could kind of see, I'll try to put it really close, see where I'm sewing on the lines, and you have those 1/4 inch seam allowances kind of folded off to the side there. I can get those perfect 1/4 inch seam allowances because I'm using this at a 1/4 ruler. And I thought, you know, this really, really helps. So paper piecing, one of the items that you're going to need is this at a 1/4 ruler. Now, can you do it with a regular ruler? Yes, absolutely you can. You would have to be very precise in making sure that you cut a 1/4 inch away from the fabric that you're trying to baste together. So you definitely can. This just, the tool makes it so much easier. Definitely something that I think is worth it. And it really was not very pricey. So really good to have. Okay, so English paper piecing, you have to hand sew them. You need your glue sticks, you need paper templates, the fabric, your rotary cutter, needle and thread, and you will probably want that little thimble to help out. Paper piecing, you machine sew together. You need your foundation paper sheets, or you can use the freezer paper method. You would need your rotary cutter and your at a 1/4 ruler. So for paper piecing, I do use an 80-12 needle. So that's the type of needle that you're going to want. And for the English paper piecing, I do like to use cotton thread. They also have these hand quilting threads that you can get. So I do have a couple of those. Sometimes I do use that as well, but you would really want cotton thread when you're putting those together. And the reason for that is you really want it to be strong. When you're hand sewing it, you know, you definitely want that strength to be there, and you want to be very particular when you are sewing those things together to make sure that your width is not very wide, because you don't want to pull on it and it either falls apart or it's just too loose. You want to make sure that when you are sewing them together, you do put them very close and you make sure that it's nice and tight. That way, when you open it back up, your seams look spot on. Alrighty, let's see what else I have on here. Any other tips that I can share with you? Let's see. So, paper piecing advantages. It improves your accuracy when you're piecing your quilts together. It makes complex blocks easy for you to manage. So things like that one that I showed you from the magazine looks like it's complex. It really isn't. And following the paper piecing method really makes you be able to complete these complex projects. So don't be scared of trying these complex things. They are not that difficult. They look difficult, but they're really not. So do give it a shot. You know, paper piecing makes it easy for you to get those crisp points. You know, it helps to address odd angles. So all those angles that are really difficult to get, paper piecing method is really, really great for that. And it does help you keep organized, right? So you have to keep your organization skills going, and that does help when you're doing these types of projects. We talked about fussy cutting, you know, cutting fabric that features a specific design or an image. You know, it's not really economical when you think about it. Sometimes you are wasting some fabric, but if you're looking for a specific design, you may want to include fussy cutting into your quilt or your your project in order to get the look that you want. So be a little mindful of that. You know, you may want to try to work around the actual fabric to get the actual design that you want, and maybe you can try to be as much economical as you can so you don't waste so much fabric. Freezer paper, we talked about that lets you iron the fabric on the paper, and that helps because nothing will slide off on you or it doesn't move around, and then you don't need to use a fabric glue pen for that, right? You would just need to use the freezer paper and your iron. So you do need an iron if you're doing that type of method. And then just the regular paper piecing method, which is kind of like a stitch and flip. You would stitch them, you would flip the fabric over, cut it with a 1/4 inch plus ruler, you know, and do things that way. Okay, so those are all the different methods and techniques that I had that I wanted to kind of share with you guys. I did just pick up something that I thought I wanted to just show you guys here before I forget. Now, I know a lot of you use little rings, or I use, you know, those little, I forget what these things are called. These are like paper protectors that you would use back in the day, right? So it will help you to keep things from not, you know, getting all wrinkly and stuff. But, you know, you used to put these on your notebook, and you can find these at the dollar store as well. But one thing that I did find this week when I went to the dollar store is they had these kind of protectors. They're like little sheet protectors, and they had them over in the section where they have all the things for the kids for school and stuff. And I thought these are great because they don't come with this ring. I have these little rings here, but they do have this ring which help protect it from, you know, being more sturdy. And I put things like my sim thread color chart. You know, I can put other things that, you know, I like to use as references, and sometimes I like to kind of just have handy around the room. So I have these Pellon guides that I use for interfacing and things like that. But I did usually have them, on this, but I did find this one at the Dollar Tree, and I really love it because it's a lot bigger, a lot more sturdier, it's clear, and you can just kind of get these little rings. They sell them at the dollar store as well. You can get the little rings and just kind of have them hanging. So this helps to keep little references and things that you need as you're doing the project. Sometimes, like if you're embroidering something and you need, you know, your color chart, you know, you're not sure which color would be better, you know, you want to have these kind of just hanging somewhere, and it just protects it. And I got it at the dollar store, so I thought it was really neat. You know, I guess you could even just make these if you wanted to, but I just picked a couple of them up, and I thought, you know, these would be really neat for me to have in my craft room so that I can kind of just hang these little reference charts and color charts, and I can grab them, and it kind of protects them and keeps them available for me. So these are just ones that I had from before, so I'm probably going to transfer them from these type of sheets to these so that, you know, they're a little bit more sturdier. So just a little tip that I wanted to share with you on that one, because I did find that and I thought that was a great catch for anyone who has their craft room and is looking for places to put their little reference guides, because I know that these can kind of get lost in your craft room. So I think that's everything that I have. I will show you a few other things next week, because I do have more projects that I want to get done with paper piecing, and so I'll show you the results of that. And if you're in our Facebook group, I'll go ahead and put that out on Facebook as well. But thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope to be crafting with you soon. So go ahead and just show a video that you are interested in. You can just click on over and see all of the other materials that we have out there, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So thank you so much for joining, and I appreciate all of your time. Hoping to be crafting with you soon, guys. Bye.